Why we don't stand?
All right. Told that our technical difficulty is resolved and that we're good to go. So just picking up a disclosure of pecuniary interest. Does any other counselor have a disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. So before we get into correspondence, I do want to congratulate Mr. Craig Miller. He's assuming his new position as Manager of Community Services and Facilities. Congratulations, Craig. I hear that you're already knocking it out of the park over there, so we're all very pleased about that. Okay, moving on to item number 6, correspondence. 6.1, I'm going to put an oral resolution on the floor. This is an important one for every municipality in the province, including ourselves. We're all facing infrastructure funding problems, and we need to make sure that that funding is in place. So this resolution, if you have read it, is in support of the OSIP funding and keeping it in place, actually earmarking envelopes for individual municipalities and ensuring that it's geared to inflation. So the resolution, the oral resolution I'll put on the floor is that Council make a resolution of support for the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund as in the Edwardsboro Cardinal Resolution. Can I get a mover and seconder on that, please? Councillor Brunetta, Councillor McTaggart. Any discussion on this, councillors? Seeing none, calling the question. All in favor? That's carried. Nobody is opposed. Item 6.2, the Emu La Valley have asked us to contribute to their community center, their fundraising. Councillors, any appetite to help out someone in the district? Okay, seeing none, we'll send them a letter. Okay. Item 6.3, this is an important one for the community, I think. This is a request from Riverside Healthcare for a donation for their imaging. And I'm looking again to Council for your direction on this. Would you like to donate to Riverside to help fund their imaging? Okay, I'm seeing none. Then we will send them a letter to that effect. Moving into reports. My report, as always, is a written report, but I'll just touch on a couple of the items in there. I'm getting a lot of requests for media interviews during the last couple of weeks. I have a regular monthly lunch date with the general manager of the Fort Francis Times. He's trying to increase his circulation. I think he's doing a really good job. One of the things that he's working on is attempting to cover Treaty 3 news and news from all of the area First Nations. You'll recall about a third of Fort Francis identifies as being Indigenous. So I give him credit for that. And I also want to point out that I think we're very, very fortunate that we actually have a community newspaper. It's so important, I think, that a community such as Fort Frances has a community newspaper, and I urge everybody to support it. And I really like the work that the new general manager, Andrew Flynn, is doing over there. Then I was interviewed by the Times on our budget deliberations at the last meeting and what the expected tax increase might be and why it might be that. Some of you might have seen the article in the paper. Thunder Bay Media also contacted me. They contact me on a regular basis. They upped their coverage of Fort Frances and district municipalities. They wanted to talk about the final report of the InterVistas, which you now have and we'll be discussing later in our meeting. Whenever I have them online or on the phone, I always try to put a plug in for various activities in Fort Frances. So I talked up our Legion Loop. They were quite interested in that story, and I hope to see that they do a story on the Legion Loop. One thing, I was invited to do a budget presentation on the preliminary budget in Thunder Bay. So I accepted the invitation, and then once I had accepted it and written out my presentation, I realized that there was a firm 3-minute time limit on the presentation, and so I timed myself and then cut my presentation and then timed myself and cut my presentation again. 3 minutes isn't very long. I had 3 items in the presentation, so I had 1 minute an item, and I thought, it's really not worth going to Thunder Bay. It was bad driving conditions at that time for 3 minutes. I did have the option then of sending it in electronically or mailing it in. I was going to send it in electronically, but then Deputy Mayor Bean contacted me and said he had a letter of support for one of the items that I was championing, so I wanted to include that, so I mailed it in. And the 3 items that I covered were airport capital funding, which is very important to us right now. Of course, water and wastewater, we need consistent funding. We talked about that a little bit with the ACIP funding, and then the perennial one, policing. And for any of these things, I have copies, so if anybody would like to read my budget presentation, because I didn't have to give it and limit myself to 3 minutes, I could mail the whole presentation in, and I did that. So if you want to read that, just let me know. I'll email you a copy. I'm working with area First Nations as much as I can. I think reconciliation is very, very important, and it's a very important economic item as well. They have a new chief at Rainy River First Nation, Chief Leonard. And for those of us who are at the Rainy River Municipal Association AGM, he issued a challenge. He said that local leaders need to lead when it comes to substance abuse and addictions. I took that to heart, and I spoke at length to Chief Leonard about that and what we could do here in Fort Frances to rise to his challenge. And to that end, I've spoken to the CAO of the DSAB and the CAO of Canadian Mental Health Association locally, as well as Chief Breer and Chief Leonard. And we're going to get together and do a brainstorming session to see how we can partner with Indigenous chiefs and bands to perhaps do more than's currently being done on the issue of addictions and also the perennial item that I'm working on that's related to Rainy River First Nations is the International Bridge. I'd like to see 2 things happen. We've been working on this for a couple of years now. One is to get a brand new bridge that doesn't have a toll like they have in Burnett. But in the meantime, that's going to take time. I'd like to see the tolls come down if that's possible. One of the reasons the tolls are so high is the costs of maintaining that bridge and paying for the complete cost of operating the Canada Customs facility there. So in talking with Chief Leonard, they're trying to get the federal government to waive those costs. I agreed to write a letter with him, so we're going to send a joint letter to the federal government requesting that those costs be waived. I've I've written a letter. I've shared it with Chief Leonard. He shared it with his lawyers. And if any council members would like to see that letter, you're more than welcome to see that letter. I'll send it to you. Another item that's happening, and again, I think it's very important. We're in the basin of Lake of the Woods. And so the Lake of the Woods Sustainability Foundation every year has a forum on preserving the basin, preserving the Lake of the Woods water and the waters of all of the lakes and tributaries that flow into it. So some of you will have been at a meeting where Tika Newton, who's the executive director of that, spoke. She's a very intelligent and well-spoken person. She coordinates the forum that they're having. It's a very large forum. This year it's in International Falls. She just switched it from a live forum to an online forum due to the difficulties that are going on in Minneapolis. She asked the mayor of International Falls and myself if we would be keynote speakers, and she wanted us to speak about the proclamation of friendship that we issued this past summer between Fort Frances and International Falls. So Mayor Dillon and I agreed that we would do that. We're going to put together a video. I'm out of town during that forum, so we're going to do a video ahead of time, and we'll each do a presentation on video about International Falls and Fort Frances getting along. And I just want to do one last shout out. I'd like to give another shout out to the Fort Frances Curling Club. They, I think, punch well above their weight. They don't get, I think, the publicity that they should get, and they're always doing amazing things for our community. The most recent one is that the Ministry of Natural Resources held their annual regional bonspiel at the Curling Club. So they graciously asked me if I'd come down and bring greetings and throw out the first rock. I was a little leery about throwing out the first rock because I haven't curled in 40 years, but I managed not to do a face plant. But it was just a wonderful atmosphere. Some of the teams were in costumes, and it was a really good thing to have people from all over the Northwestern Ontario coming to this bonspiel and seeing Fort Frances. So shout out to the Fort Frances Curling Club. Way to go. And with that, I'll go to Councillor Mackey.
Thank you, Worship. I'm going to speak to the Doctor Recruitment Committee. So the last meeting was in September 18th and the December meeting was canceled. The most recent one was now January 29th. And so in that time frame, 2 doctors have began their practice in the EMO clinic, Dr. Ahmed and Dr. Pierce. Rainy River does not have any doctors. It is staffed 100% by locums. And Todd Hamilton does a tremendous job of tracking down doctors to fill the void there. Here in Fort Frances, last fall, Dr. Mansour started here in Fort Frances. Just before Christmas, Dr. Azarmju started his practice. Arriving any day now will be Dr. Madair. Please forgive me if I'm destroying the pronunciation of some of these. And in May, June, there will be a 4th doctor, Dr. Samanbadi, arriving. So that will be 2 in EMO, 4 in Fort Frances. On top of that, then we are also going to have, where's his name here? We have a surgeon coming to work, Dr. El Samani. He'll be arriving in March or April to work with Dr. Shiraz, sorry, the other surgeon. So that's 6 doctors and a surgeon in the last 5 months. There is also 2 U.S. doctors. One is an ER doctor and another GP who are in the final stages of all of the government paperwork required for them to start their practice here. Exactly when that'll be, I don't have that information yet. So on a doctor front, I think that's great news, and kudos to the doctor recruitment team and Todd Hamilton specifically.
That is good news, and thank you very much for that positive report. Councillor McTaggart?
Thank you, Your Worship. A report on the Rainy River District OPP Detachment Board. The board met on December 15th for a lunch meeting for our regular board meeting. A part of the regular business, as part of the regular business, we took the opportunity to honor retired OPP Constable Guy Baudry, who retired in July of 2025 after many years of service, a dedicated service, that is, to the Rainy River District. Also at the same meeting, we bid farewell to Detachment Commander Gregory Givens, who leaves the detachment after 2 years of command in Fort Frances to return to a position at regional headquarters in Thunder Bay. On January 19th, the detachment board met again. At this meeting, we welcomed the new detachment commander, Inspector Jim Mills. Inspector Mills and his wife, who is also an OPP officer, will continue to make Fort Frances their home. The board is very pleased to welcome Inspector Mills to his new position. Being the first meeting of the board for the new year, our bylaws call for the election of chair and vice chair of the board. I was very honored to be reappointed as board chair, and Lou Kempf of Dawson Township was appointed as vice chair. Excuse me. The board approved the annual budget of $28,250 to be split amongst the board's 9 communities. The board did meet in camera to discuss a mandated review of the detachment and detachment commander's performance review. This is a legislative requirement of the detachment board. Detachment command staff delivered the year-end numbers for the catchment area, and the numbers are very encouraging. Cruiser patrol hours, foot patrol hours, and school patrol hours are all on the increase. The increase in foot patrols is particularly good news for our downtown area. 2025 saw violent crimes calls for service were down by 20.1%, with almost all subsets seeing significant reductions. Property crime was down 17.4%, and drug crime reduced by 8.7%. Other crimes were up by 9 calls or 1.5%, so a fairly small increase. And criminal code and provincial statute charges were down 4.1%. Clearance rates, while down from previous year, are still above the provincial and regional numbers. Motor vehicle collisions were down 14.8% for the year. The number of overdose calls was down from the year before, but very unfortunately, the number of deaths doubled year over year. The bottom line is that many of the initiatives that the OPP have put in place, such as directed patrols, foot patrols, and the great work of the MCERT team, are all showing positive results in the area. On February 6th, I, along with Lou Kempf, were able to attend the detachment's non-commissioned officers meeting to talk about the detachment board and the work that it does. This was the first of its kind for this meeting, and I hope it will continue in the future. The mayor reported that on January 29th, 3 members of the detachment board attended a virtual zone meeting for the OAPSB, so I won't go into that. On the 27th of January at 4:30, I attended the Museum and Cultural Advisory Committee meeting at the museum. We welcomed new member Charles Spear, but sadly we were made aware of the resignation of Jennifer Thorpe. So the search for more committee members continues. Elections were held for the committee chair, and Sarah Marusik is the new chair. Thank you to Christine Denby for her past leadership. The museum is currently on winter hours, excuse me, of Monday to Wednesday and Friday, 11 a.m. to 4 p.m., and Thursday, 12 noon to 7 p.m. Curator Lisa Hughes continues to seek out any and all possible funding avenues for the museum and Rainy Lake Square. A new display opened last Tuesday called From Badge to Bench, a history of local policing, courts, and corrections. This display will be in place until work on the HVAC system begins. That's as long as we approve it later tonight. And just a bit of history. On the 5th of June of this year, it will be 30 years since the OPP commenced policing of the community. So, got the right date? So, a bit of a milestone. December and January were both very busy months for programming, with many events selling out. Year-over-year numbers for 24-25 for the museum show an almost 59% increase in the number of visits to the museum. Unfortunately, though, the numbers at the Rainy Lake Square saw about a 29% decrease. The good news is that planning is already underway for programming at the square for 2026, so hopefully we'll see better use of it. Stay tuned for more information on these plans. And please check the museum's website and Facebook page for many planned activities now through to the end of March. And just one final thing. At the last meeting, Councillor Mackey reported about at the Senior Center that we did an evening for the volunteers, and the volunteers are really the heartbeat and the success of the Senior Center. But I want to just give, if I can give my shout out, it would be to Councillor Mackey and his wife Lori for the awesome meal that they prepared that evening of smoked turkey and smoked ham. And it was just a wonderful evening of visiting and food. And thanks to Councillor Mackey and thanks to the volunteers at the Senior Center. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor McTaggart. We'll move on to the consent agenda. We have 2 items tonight. 8.2, these are the regular meeting minutes of January 26, and the recommendation reads, the council approved the following council meeting minutes as presented, the special meeting of January 26, 2026, and the regular meeting of January 26, 2026. Item 8.3, these are boards and committee meeting minutes, and the recommendation reads that the following boards and committee meeting minutes be received as information, the downtown BIA minutes of December 10th, 2025. Councilors, would you like to pull any of those? Seeing none, I have a resolution that states that council approve the consent agenda items as follows. Agenda items 8.2 and 8.3. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Morrison and Councillor Bien. Any discussion? All in favor? It's carried. Okay, moving on to item number 9, Administration and Finance Division reports. 9.1, we had a last-minute addition, and the recommendation that I'll put on the floor reads that council approve report AR-26-1014 titled the NOHFC Agreement Indigenous Internshipment, and that council approve the mayor and clerk to sign the conditional contribution agreement with the NOHFC to partially fund the Indigenous student intern position. Can I get a mover and seconder on that, please? Councillor Brunetta and Councillor Bien. Discussion, councillors? Calling the question, all in favor? That's carried. No one was opposed. Item 10, our Community Service Division reports. There are none. Item 11, Planning and Development Division reports. We have our first Economic Development report from our new Economic Development Officer. I'll put a resolution on the table. Recommend this reads that council receive report AR-26-1005 titled Fort Frances Economic Development Report Q1 2026 as information. Could I get a mover and seconder for that, please? Councillor Bien and Councillor Morrison. And before I open the floor, I just want to thank Mr. Ghosh for an excellent report. Very, very professionally done. Councillors, questions, comments? Councillor Brunetta?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, thank you for the report. I was very much looking forward to it, and I'm happy to see something come from economic development. I think it's a good start, and it's a good base for where we can update on future reports. A lot of the projects in the report have already been completed, so that's good news. But I would like to see continuous updates on those projects that are still in the works. So things like the microgrid and the Highbury project, different things like that. The thing that really was in my mind in terms of a report to council are maybe things that were discussed previously at our former Economic Development Committee. So the committee itself would hear things that are in the works. So our former consultant that did our economic development would come to our meetings and they'd say, in the last, several months, I've had contact with X number of developers. I've received phone calls from interested parties in certain things. And I realize many of those things would have to be discussed in camera, but I would like council to be privy to that information because many times we're approached by the public who say, oh, I hear so-and-so is going to be doing this or that. And if we don't know about it, it feels wrong. It feels like we should know about these things before, it gets out into the public. So that's sort of my thoughts of the report going forward. Maybe a combination of a quarterly report with updates of things that are already in progress, as well as possibly some information coming to council in an in-camera session. But thank you. It's a great report.
Thank you, Councilor Brunetta. Further questions and/or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. No one was opposed. Okay, moving to item 11.2, the proposed terms of reference for the ad hoc Kiwanis Sunny Cove Sale Committee. I'll put a resolution on the floor which reads, the council approval of report AR-26-1003 agrees with the recommendation of administration to adopt the attached terms of reference to establish the ad hoc Kiwanis Sunny Cove Sale Committee, and that an amending bylaw be brought to council at a later time to include these terms of reference into bylaw 90-23. Can I get a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Mackey and Councillor Bien. Okay, councillors, questions, comments? Councillor McTaggart?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question in terms of procedure for the terms of reference. Does terms of reference not usually identify who would be sitting on the committee on behalf of the town?
CBO Burrows.
Thank you, and through the chair. Thank you for this point. It was something that came to my mind as we were going through this agenda this evening, is I didn't identify that two members of council should select themselves. I was going to bring it up after council had the opportunity for questions, but it is a great point. As part of this discussion, before we move forward with the actual adopting bylaw, council should select two of their members to be on this board to represent council.
Good one, Councillor McTaggart. So we might as well do that right now. Councillor Bien?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I guess, to Mr. Burrows. It says here terms of appointment for the length of the project. When the project is complete, the term will end. We're very close to this term ending. How do we get around that? If I don't realize we want to expedite this sale, but at the same time, is 6 months enough time to do it? And what happens if the two people appointed not on council?
CBO Burrows.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, and through the chair. We anticipate that this is going to take less than 6 months, but if we're having difficulties with the sale process and it does lead forward, as part of one of the mandates of the committee is to reestablish or revise the terms of reference as needed at the point where we would be coming to the end of this council term. If we're seeing that this project is taking longer and it would involve a new council, there should be a point of having a motion provided to establish new council appointees to this committee.
Any further questions? Do we have council members who are interested in sitting on this? Councilor Mackey? Anyone else? Okay, Councilor Bean? So I'll need someone to make an amendment to the resolution that council appoint Councilor Mackey and Councilor Bean to the committee. So moved by Councilor McTaggart, seconded by Councilor Mackey. Any discussion on the amendment? On the amendment, all in favor? That's carried. So the main motion now reads what you have in front of you with the addition that Councilor Mackey and Councilor Bean will sit on the committee. Councilor Mackey, you're okay with that? That's on your motion. You moved that, and Councilor Bean, you're okay with that? On the main motion, any further discussion? Councilor McTaggart?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have great concern with clause number 6 in the terms of reference. And if the ad hoc committee determines that the sale isn't feasible with the current restrictions in place, then they're going to be able to remove those restrictions. And I don't agree with that. If that's the case, then why isn't the town being allowed the same opportunity? And that is one of the reasons that I originally voted to sell, because the restrictions were in place. So I will not support this motion if that clause stays in there.
Okay. Anybody want to comment on that? CBO Burrows, and then I'll go to Councilor Bernetta.
So the reason why this was put in as a aspect for conversations with the committee was that the Kiwanis Club, in conversations with them, at least with the conversations that I've had with them, has been indicated that the restrictive covenant would only be removed in the sense of they were looking to sell to a third party, but weren't able to obtain a desirable third party with the caveat still on the property. Because information hasn't changed surrounding that in conversations with Kiwanis, that's how we've outlined it in the terms of reference. If the committee, in discussions with the Kiwanis, determines that that is different than what was intended, obviously, before any sort of agreement comes before council, information surrounding that will come before council.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up? Councilor Bernetta?
I just want to express my agreement with Councillor McTaggart.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further discussion? Yes, Councilor Bean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I'm just curious, has the property been appraised yet in terms of what value you might get for it if somebody comes forward with an offer to purchase?
CBO Burrows?
Through the chair, no, it hasn't. That would be a part of the will of the committee if they would want to have it appraised while proceeding through the real estate transaction. Having a property appraised does incur costs. So proceeding with that, we would want to ensure that it's as agreed upon and as perceived by the committee as a desirable outcome as part of the process.
Follow up?
Just curious, would not be beneficial to have an idea of what the property is worth before we entertain offers, though? I mean, to me, it sounds like it's money that would be well spent. Thank you.
CBO Burrows?
Through the chair, it is a good piece of information to have. Again, this wasn't one of the terms that was previously discussed with the committee prior to establishing these terms of reference. Again, as part of the committee's endeavor, if they and how they choose to form an agreement to work together on, that could be a point of seeking a desirable price for the property, and through that, getting the land appraised for that sale price.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Opposed? Noted. Okay. Moving on to item 12, Operations and Facilities Division Reports, 12.1. This is an award of tender for the museum HVAC, and I'll put the resolution on the floor. that council approval of report AR-26-1008 will agree with the recommendation of administration to award tender 2025-CS-02 to M Builds for a total tender price of $796,800, including $70,000 in contingency allowance plus applicable taxes, and that the budget shortfall for the construction and required engineering support be funded from the Corporate Buildings Reserve Fund. Can I get a mover and seconder on this one, please? Councillor McTaggart, Councillor Bernetta. Councillors, discussion. Councillor Behan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I'm just curious where they come up with the budget shortfall of 110,823 when it looks to me like 96,800. I'm not sure where that extra 14,000 is coming from. Thank you.
Manager Rob.
Thank you, through the chair. That's our portion of HST.
Councillor McTaggart.
Thank you, Your Worship. Last meeting, we received bids on another project that was over budget, and we had to go to reserves to cover that overage. Again, tonight, we are being asked to cover an overage from reserves. I don't think this is sustainable. The museum desperately needs the new HVAC system to preserve the historical artifacts in its possession. We are struggling to get our estimates lined up with bids. This will be over $400,000 on two projects, and it concerns me. Can administration even hazard a guess at how many projects we're going to go to tender this year and what damage it might be?
I don't know if that can be answered. Does anyone want to take a stab at that? CAO Michaels?
Thank you, Your Worship. Obviously, we're not striving to get bids to come in, but in the last report that I believe Councillor McTaggart is referring to, I believe we had 6 bids. So I think we're addressing the idea that we want people to bid, but we can't control the cost, the economies, the tariffs, things of that nature that do affect these costs. Now, it's an ongoing challenge to budget appropriately. We don't want to budget too high. Alternatively, I've seen many municipalities budget higher and contractors see the amount that is much higher and then bid higher on top of that. So there's strategic approaches to this. At the end of the day, council has complete control that we see the reserve balances, we see the overages, and you have the ability to say yay or nay to certain projects. It's never going to be a perfect science. And alternatively, having the amounts higher, again, I'll argue contractors are seeing those amounts and are going to bid higher. So we are open to other alternatives on how to do this, but it makes it really challenging. So again, if we look at it holistically, out of 10 projects, maybe we do chop one because ultimately that's all we can do. But we don't know how to overcome some of these challenges. If we were getting 1 or 2 bids, I'll reiterate, and that was a problem before, I would strongly say that we have to regroup. But if we're getting, good, multiple bids, I think it is what it is in a weird way. Thank you.
Thank you. Follow up?
I think on this project, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was only 1 bid, which is unfortunate. But I think your point is well taken that later in the year we may be at the point of having to axe a project because we've just tapped reserves too much.
Thank you, Councillor McTaggart. Further comments? Councillor Bernetta.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's unfortunate because, as Councillor McTaggart said, this is a priority for the museum. They've been waiting for a long time for the HVAC system. And it's really important to keep all of our exhibits and things in proper shape. So I know in the past when we've had bids that have gone over our budget, we've adjusted the scope somewhat. I don't know if there's any opportunity for this bid to look at the scope to see if we can maybe pare it down a little bit.
Rob?
Thank you, through the chair. There isn't, and that's why it wasn't one of the options. Really, the only other option would be to abandon the upgrades and go just for a like-for-like replacement. What the cost for that would be, I don't know.
Councillor Morrison? I think we're having trouble getting, Councillor Bien?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I mean, I certainly agree with Councillor McTaggart and Councillor Bernetta that these are troubling, that these overages all the time, and I've spoken out against it as well over the past projects, et cetera. In this case, it seems to me it's essential to the museum going forward that this is fixed. The other two options were given is almost like they're piecemeal to me, or Band-Aids, and I wonder if down the road that might end up costing us more money than if we just try and fix the problem right now and get it done once and for all, for at least the foreseeable future anyway. So that's why I'm be in favor of this, because I think it is important to the museum going forward that this is done. And I'm not so sure the other two options are palatable to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bien. Councillor Morrison, do you want to try again?
Yep, can you hear me now?
Yep, can hear you. Go ahead.
Yep, thank you. To the chair, I'm just wondering, what are the benefits of the upgrade, and do you have any even approximate idea how much the like for like replacements would be? I'm just curious about that, because of just, and what the downfalls of going like for like would be. Thank you.
Manager Rob?
Thank you through the chair. So a big push on this project was to move away from having 4 separate HVAC systems in the building, bringing that down to 3, basically one per floor, roughly. The issue that we run into with the rooftop units, they're not super old in terms of age of this type of equipment. However, they are way oversized for the area they're trying to condition. So they short cycle lots. They run lots. They run lots of issues with overheating, tripping out sensors, things like that, because they are just so big. So we undertook some design to consolidate the 2 into 1, and have it a bigger unit and address that. I would say, based on the tender submissions for this, going to 2 rooftop units is probably going to be somewhere in the $600,000 range. However, without going to tender, I can't confirm that that's an accurate number. It's just based on the tender pricing for the single rooftop unit.
Thank you, Manager Rob. Further questions or comments? I'll make a comment. I think if you believe, as I do, that museums are essential to communities, because to forget your history dooms you to repeat it, and museums are places where people entrust valuable historical relics. Without a proper HVAC system, those relics can't be preserved, and your past and your history can't be preserved. So I certainly see where councillors are concerned about the overage. I am concerned about that too. But I think on this particular item, I think it's essential that we put a proper HVACs and do it right the first time so that we preserve our heritage. With that, I'll ask for final questions or comments. And then I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. No one was opposed. Thank you. Okay, moving on to 12.2. This is the Intervistas Air Passenger Service Feasibility Study Final Report. The recommendation reads that approval of report AR-26-1002 will agree with the recommendation of administration for council to support initial discussions and negotiations with passenger air carriers on providing passenger air service in Fort Frances, and that administration update council on these negotiations and potential costs associated with the service at a future council meeting. Need a mover and seconder on that, please. Councillor Bernetta and Councillor McTaggart. And we go to discussion or questions. Councillors, Councillor Bernetta.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just wondering how this would affect the ACAP funding. So if we do get a passenger service, I know we were delayed until I think 2025 to get it previously, and then we lost our passenger service, so we couldn't get it. So how, do we go back into a rotation of so many years, or how does it work in terms of getting funding?
Manager Rob.
Thank you through the chair. So in order to be eligible for ACAP funding, you need to have a scheduled air service, air passenger service, sorry, and you need to move 3,000 passengers a year at a minimum. So step 1 is we need a passenger service. Step 2 is we need to move 3,000 passengers per year. We have done it before. regularly prior to COVID. We're moving north of 3,000 passengers a year, so that's not impossible. That will take time. Once we have hit those thresholds, we can apply to ACAP for projects that we are eligible for based on their funding criteria.
Thank you, Manager Rob. Councillor Bernetta. Councillor McTaggart.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I read the report, and there are some things in there that I didn't understand fully, but I need some help understanding a bit of it. But two questions. First of all, on page 130, there's a discussion about Kenora and Dryden's revenues increasing. Growth revenues per movement, Kenora and Dryden, they're increasing, and Fort Frances is not. And I'm wondering what they're doing differently as compared to Fort Frances.
Does anyone have that information? Manager Rob.
Thank you, through the chair. I'm just going to that page. Hold. Bear with me for a quick second.
Down. Sorry.
137, you said?
130.
130. Okay. Oh, too far.
It's the middle. It's the middle point. Plus.
Okay, so that's speaking to the revenue that the three airports see per movement. So we charge, depending on what the aircraft is, what the flight is, we have a number of fees that we charge for using the airport. So in Dryden and Kenora, they've seen an increase in the revenues that are associated with those movements where we have not, and it's more due to the types of flights that we see versus the types of flights that Dryden and Kenora see. And then, of course, also the fees that we charge the various flights. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Follow up?
Specific to that one, are we competitive in terms of the charges per aircraft type as with Kenora and Dryden?
Manager Rob?
Through the chair, yes. They looked at all of our rates, and we are all very close. I mean, there's some variety across the different rates, but like we're largely right in the market.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to go around again. I'll get back to you. Councillors, other councillors, questions, comments? Councillor Behan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. So if I'm understanding this correctly, we're just sort of talking tonight about whether or not we're willing to entertain the return or financially support the return of air passenger service. I think air passenger service is critical to our community and because of the airport, and we need the airport, and we're right now pushing or lobbying the government for some provincial support for the capital end of things. If we get ACAP funding again, that'd be great. So I guess right now I'm in favor, without knowing what those costs may be, I'm in favor certainly of pursuing this because I think it's important that we have regular air service again.
Thank you for that, Councillor Behan. Back to you, Councillor McTaggart.
Councillor Morrison may have...
Councillor Morrison, did you have your hand up?
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Okay, back to you, Councillor McTaggart.
Okay, so having read the report and understanding that there is a potential for air passenger service in our community along with Dryden, Kenora has recently introduced a service. What are our next steps and who's going to take the lead on this with Dryden, I assume, to advance this project?
Manager Rob.
Thank you, through the chair. So Manager and I have already kind of started doing some legwork in the background prior to this report coming to council. It was heard very, very loud and clear through the various public sessions that we had, discussions the three airports had with InterVistas along the way. Nobody's necessarily interested in reigniting what we call the milk run, which is where one aircraft goes from Fort Frances to Kenora to Dryden to Thunder Bay on a loop. So I think really, from this report, it's incumbent upon each municipality to go out and try and find themselves air service. So Sumantra and I have, in that light, have got started. We've started some initial conversations with some different carriers. And really what we wanted to do tonight, to Councillor Behan's point, is see what the appetite around the table was for some financial support. We don't know what the number is yet, but we didn't feel that it was worth putting the time in to go to the various carriers if that wasn't a discussion the council was interested in having on a go-forward basis. So once we have some direction from council tonight, we will continue our discussions with some carriers, see what sort of needs they have in order to put it together. We're also talking with some, trying to get some meetings set up with some local agencies that move people and goods around the region, and see if we can't get them to the table. Maybe commit to buying some seats on flights, or at the very least have a better understanding of specifically when and where they need to move people, and then take that with these findings, the findings from our Lumix study that we did in 2024, and take all of that to these carriers and start having those discussions.
Thank you. And just at the tail end of the report, I found there's some interesting contacts with conferences and associations that may be very beneficial. So it was a good report. Thank you.
Councillor Behan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you, again, maybe to Mr. Rob. It's my understanding that other airports are doing this. They're offering some sort of subsidy or financial benefit to attract air carriers. Is that true?
Manager Rob?
Thank you, through the chair. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's, if we want to see success in bringing an air carrier back, they have to be able to do it at no risk. And that is going to be challenging for them to do on their own without some financial support from somebody. Other airports in the area that have passenger service have done that, waiving fees, providing revenue guarantees, pre-purchasing tickets. There's a number of different ways that they can do it, but at the end of the day, that's what it's going to take to successfully bring a carrier back. No one is going to come to Fort Frances just for the sake of coming to Fort Frances.
Just follow up.
I think on a plus side, if I'm understanding it correctly, our fuel costs are very low compared to other communities, so that might be an incentive to that carriers will look at to say, hey, yeah, Fort Frances is viable for us or feasible for us. So I'll just go with that.
Thank you. Just a couple of points. One of the points is that providing some in-kind incentives is one thing. The big thing is basically guaranteeing that the airline isn't going to lose money. The report was quite positive in that it stated clearly that they believe that Fort Frances can support a passenger service. So if that's true, and if we can find a willing carrier, the fact that we're willing to guarantee that they don't suffer losses doesn't mean that we're going to be paying anything out. Hopefully that we wouldn't be paying anything out. So there's that. So final questions, comments? Yeah, Councillor Behan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you again. If I read correctly, I think I read a news article over the Christmas holidays where our local MPP, Minister Rickford, indicated some sort of support or interest in provincial subsidies for air carriers to help out. Is that something maybe we can lobby for as well, part and parcel with our lobbying efforts for the capital end of things, to also encourage the province to help subsidize these air carriers as well?
We can absolutely lobby for that, and I definitely will get on that if we go forward with this. Further questions, comments? Okay, so bearing in mind we're not committing ourselves to anything other than the step of bringing back a report on feasibility, I'll call the question. All in favor? That was carried and no one was opposed. Okay, that brings us to bylaws. We have two this evening. Recommendation reads that the following bylaws be introduced and read and finally passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the corporate seal, and become law forthwith. Bylaw 08-26, award of tender 2025-05-16, and bylaw 10-26, that's the NOHFC agreement for the Indigenous internship. Could I get a mover and seconder on that, please? Councillor Morrison and Councillor Behan. Any discussion? Calling the question. All in favor? And that's carried. No one was opposed. Okay, item 14 is notice of motion or motion to reconsider. There are none. And item 15 is closed session. So I'll put a resolution on the floor that council now meet in camera in order to address a matter pertaining to, one, draft statements, resettlement costs. This falls under 239-2E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. And two, right of first refusal regarding 380 8th Street East. This falls under 239-2C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. Can I get a mover and seconder on that, please? Councillor Brunetta, Councillor McTaggart. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. No one was opposed. So for folks following virtually, we'll now move into closed session. And at the end of closed session, we'll come back to open session and rise and report. Thank you.
He likes it.
I think it's going to be.
Thank you. Looking forward to seeing you on many committees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get my last email?
My head exploded a little bit. Can you find it? I believe it. I can.
No, that was like next level.
That was printed off. I know I didn't email you off. I think I actually want that. Of course not. Came out absolutely. Came out strong at the end.
Sorry, try it again.
Councillor Morrison, how are things going? Is your shoulder going to get fixed?
I hope so. I see the surgeon tomorrow. So we'll see.
Well, good luck with that.
Thank you.
Okay, we're back in open session here, and we will report on item 15.2. I have a resolution. The council direct administration to proceed with option number 2 as revised to be released to the public via the town social media and website. Can I get a mover and seconder on that, please? Councillor Behan and Councillor Bernetta. Calling the question, all in favor? That was carried, and Councillor Morrison abstained because he declared a conflict. On item right of refusal, the recommendation reads the council approve report AR-26-1006 entitled Right of First Refusal, 380 8th Street East, and that administration proceed as directed by council. Can I get a mover and seconder on that, please? Councillor Mackey, Councillor McTaggart. Calling the question, all in favor? It's carried. No one was was opposed to that. And finally, on the closed meeting minutes, the recommendation reads that council approve the January 26, 2026 closed council meeting minutes as presented. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Behan, Councillor Mackey. All in favor? That's carried. No one was opposed. Okay, that brings us to a confirmatory bylaw. The recommendation reads that bylaw 10-26, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council of the corporation of the town of Fort Frances, be introduced and read, finally passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the corporate seal, and become law forthwith. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Bernetta, Councillor Mackey. Any discussion? All in favor? It's carried. Finally, that having reached the hour of 6:43, this meeting of the council of the town of Fort Frances be now closed. Councillor McTaggart moves and Councillor Mackey seconds. All in favor? It's carried. No one was opposed, thank goodness. Thank you, councillors, very much for some good discussion and for some good counsel tonight.